Anyway, but we are here. Others will be joining us. And I am Mary Hunt at Water, welcoming each and every person to this. I'm delighted that you're here and so glad that we have this topic because it's a tough one, I think, isn't it? What to do about this question of travel. And I am very happy that Rosemary Ganley will at least kick us off on responsible travel. Can we ever do it anymore? I mean, that's pretty stark. This is Tuesday, the 13th of December, 2022, and I want to welcome you. Rosemary actually did the first tea of in February of 22, and now she's doing the last tea in December. So she is the queen of the teas. Lost the other pretender to the throne, God rest her soul. But I want to give a special welcome to those who are new to water events, especially to the tea format, which we developed during COVID to have this opportunity to talk with each other, to express our own views, have a little more of a sense of community than we sometimes feel in the book talks because of the nature of the subject. But we also offer a meditation, a liturgy, and a book talk normally during a month. And we have found that this hybrid way, this thing we call a tea, focuses on topics of common interest and concern in a more personal and, I would say, informal way, but with the same rigor and commitment to justice that characterizes everything we do here at Water. So I begin with the acknowledgement of the indigenous land that we are on here in Silver Spring, Maryland. It's the traditional and contemporary land of the Piscataway and Anacostan people. They were the original stewards of this territory. We acknowledge the trauma that is deeply embedded in the foundation of this country and in others, and the harm done to indigenous communities throughout the world, communities of color, as well as to immigrants. Water's programs are aimed at supporting and igniting social change, including justice for people of these lands. So we will take hopefully just a moment to reflect ever so briefly with gratitude on the people on whose land we are privileged to sit today. May they and their children be well. So to review our format, I'm going to offer a brief introduction of our speaker, Rosemary Ganley, and then Rosemary will offer some reflections on her recent travels, questions that have arisen for her as she has enjoyed the Galapagos and the Rhine and other parts of the world. And after her input, we'll break into small groups for conversation. And the question of the day is, what do you think about the dilemma of two goods? Traveling being a way to learn and to meet and to be in global solidarity. Mary Jelinek just mentioned coming back from Rome. And travel as a way in which we use resources that those who can afford to expend do, and a potential source of problems for those who are visited. So it's this kind of double-edged sword about travel that I really am excited to think about together and to imagine how we handle that, like other dilemmas, how we handle the dilemma of, on the one hand, the good of travel that we all know, the learning, the meeting, the being in global solidarity, and then on the other hand, the expenditure of resources and only by those who can afford it, and as a potential source of problem for those who are visited. So I've tried to frame the problematic that way. I think Rosemary will have her own, her own framing, but I think it will dovetail. We'll use the opportunity to hear from Rosemary, then we'll have some small groups and we'll have some opportunity for questions and answers with Rosemary and one another. We will close officially at the top of the hour, which would be 3 p.m. Eastern time, but the link Zoom will be open so people can continue in conversation as they wish. The video of this session will be on our website at www.waterwomensalliance.org, along with some brief notes, so you'll be able to revisit this in your own good time. I want to also take the opportunity before I introduce Rosemary Ganley to mention the Rosemary Ganley essay contest that I hope you're familiar with. In the style of Rosemary Ganley, feminists change the world 650 words at a time. And as you will know, and I will mention now as I start my introduction, Rosemary writes for the Peterborough, Ontario paper. She's an activist and a writer whose weekly columns reach a wide audience, not just in Peterborough, but many of us who are hardcore fans around the world also read her things. And what I like so much is that she packs into 650 words, both facts and information, but always a message. And so what we want to do is invite other people, especially women, to learn how to do that, to put in 650 words that could be published in their local publication or someplace else, their thoughts, their commitments, and their suggestions for activism. So through the good offices of a very kind donor, we're able to offer 3 prizes, and in good feminist style, not first, second, third, but 1, 1, 1, and they will be $650 prizes for the top 3 in our judgment of these articles that come in, with the hope that we can get them published and help people get them published in places that will make a difference. So that's what Rosemary Ganley's up to now, even though she's not actively engaged in the project itself. We have taken the liberty of using her name and her good work as a model for the rest of us. And I'm very excited about it. We already have submissions. So if you or people you know are interested in submitting, please do it, encourage others. And now I'll just finish up saying a little bit more about Rosemary. The last time I gave an introduction that was so lengthy, we said we would send it to Rome for her canonization file.
With a bone.
With a bone and a few locks of the hair and a fingernail. Those are the things that we didn't have the fingernail, so we couldn't complete the file, but it's coming. She's, of course, the author not only of these articles, but of several anthologies that she's put together of these articles. One is called Positive Community, another is called Gleanings. I highly recommend them. And she approaches her topic today based on a good deal of global experience. She and her late husband, John, spent 3 years with their 3 young sons working in Jamaica, and later founding the Canadian-based development organization, Jamaican Self-Help, and she's written a book about that. They also worked in Tanzania for several years, learning how to be global citizens with deep roots in Canada. These experiences and the 4th UN Women's Conference in Beijing in '95 shaped Rosemary's broad and wide worldview and grounded her later work through Catholics for Choice in Canada, Women Church Convergence, and other nonprofits. I can report that Trent University in Peterborough awarded her this year an honorary doctorate. It was a festive occasion, a richly deserved honor. Her son observed at the time to me, he said, "We are her clan, but you are her tribe." So I welcome a tribal elder, Dr. Rosemary Burns Ganley, our own RBG. Rosemary, please lead us in this conversation and move us in the direction of trying to resolve, at least in some way, this dilemma that we all face as we make choices about travel.
Yeah.
And thanks to Patrice, who will help with the tech pieces of this.
Thank you, Mary. What can one say? We'll copy that for the obit, right?
But they won't take it anytime soon, Rosemary, not to worry.
Well, the moral, we're faced with, as middle-class, educated, older women, we're faced with a lot of moral dilemmas. And I just tackle them with a sense of humor and a sense of solidarity with other women of goodwill and deep conscience. And this question about travel is one for today. We're in some ways emerging from COVID with a great deal of relief and a desire to see the world and our loved ones. And maybe it's an opening for new and better thinking and acting. And as Mary said to me, we're called scripturally to befriend all nations. So that's one conscience call. And yet I just went on a session last night about simplicity of living, especially at Christmas time, and overall living. And so the discernment, I think the Jesuits talk deeply about discerning, and it's needed now in each of our lives by each of us tremendously. Just a word about the content, the contest. It was your poet, Mary Oliver, who said in her short poem, Instructions on Living a Life. Now that sounds like a poem you want to read. instructions on living a life. It was 7 words. This is a genius. She said, pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. And I think that's my late life mantra, to pay attention. And that takes a fearlessness in this turbulent world. And then the spiritual Mary said, be astonished. There's so much joy and good and desire for change and human solidarity and love and sacrifice and suffering that Rebecca Solnit's another one of my favorite philosophers, all that Jewish wisdom about finding joy and not stealing yourself off against it in a sort of a sense of, oh, I can't feel that because there's so much suffering around me. So that's about the contest. I just think that all of the women who associate with water have a deep conscience and things to say that the ordinary citizen, Mary said about my kind of writing, she said, they don't teach you that in graduate school. And I am an honorer of scholarship, not a practitioner, but an honorer of it. So I feel that if I could motivate more women to express themselves, letters to the editor, small columns, church bulletins, newsletters, college magazines, then that would really be pleasing. And I think it's a time too for a little bit of delight. So I'm going to run through, with Patrice's help, the slides that from the Galapagos trip in June, that I took a 20-year-old granddaughter. She's an animal studies student at the University of Edmonton in Alberta. And on our weekly family Zoom, she was looking pretty blue. And I said, Megan, where would you most like to go in the world? And she said, oh, I've just done a project on that ancient tortoise. What was his name? You probably know, Grandpa somebody, a 120-year-old tortoise on the Galapagos in the Charles Darwin Center. And I said, Megan, how about you just book it and we'll pay later? So we went, she and I, to the Galapagos in June. And I came away with such admiration for the poor country of Ecuador and the way they have committed to saving, preserving for humanity the delights of the Galapagos Islands. There are 19 islands. And then I was reading that wonderful theologian, Elizabeth Johnson, CSJ, of Fordham. And her book is called Ask the Beasts. Ask the Beasts. It's a dialogue between theology, Christian Catholic theology, and Darwin's 1859 on the origin of species. And it's comprehensible. And she starts her book with this from Job. Ask the beasts, and they will tell you. The birds of the air, they will tell you. Ask the plants of the earth, and they will teach you. And the fish of the sea will declare to you. Who among you does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hands is the life of every living thing and the breath of every living being. So now we'll just move to an old-fashioned slideshow like you used to have in the church basements. the glories of Galapagos. It's a Garden of Eden, but in the marine sense. I mean, I've lived in Africa, and this is not a safari. In fact, I'll tell you a little bit more about the conditions of how you enjoy these glories. Okay. The Galapagos Islands, that's where Charles Darwin, age 33, spent just a few weeks in 1832. He doesn't publish On the Origin of Species until 1859 because he was afraid of a reaction from the British Anglican Church. His theories of evolution were going to upend the theology of God creates everything separately and individually. And that gives the humankind its dignity. So Darwin's ideas, which he developed in the Galapagos Islands, he held on to for a long time. So the Galapagos Islands are 600 miles off the coast of South America. So you need to be determined to go there. You fly to Quito, the city, and then there's a Ecuadorian airline that flies you the other 600 miles to San Cristobal, where there's an airport. And by the protection of the islands, you can't sleep on the islands. You have to have an arrangement to sleep on a boat nearby. Okay. We could go to the next. That's the way they look. They're dry, and it's the Pacific with heavy swells. I'll just go to the next. And I'm always interested, of course, and you are too, about the country that owns the Galapagos. It's a republic and a democracy. It has a legislature of 135% women. It was part of the Inca Empire, conquered by Spain, gained its independence from Spain. Population is 17 million, and 2 million are indigenous Quechua. And while we were there, these indigenous people were rising up, blocking roads in protest against inflation, which had hit them so hard. And I said to myself, I should be out there on the streets. That's where I would naturally be, with those people. And my all-purpose sign, which says shame, you can just keep it in your garage and have it all ready for rallies. Anyway, it was somewhat inconvenient, but it was not a violent street protest. And it's, of course, Ecuador is bisected by the equator. And this is a fact that I've found so interesting. It's a developing country with an annual income of $6,000. And Canada's is 43. And I imagine the US is a 55. The four main areas are the Galapagos, the coast, the highlands, and Quito, which is very high up. Okay. And Quito is a huge city with 100 Catholic churches. And it's in a valley, but it's at 9,000 feet. Okay. And a while ago, Quito erected a statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and their main objective was that it should be higher than the Jesus of Rio. You know the Jesus of Rio. And I think that's aluminum, but it's higher. So next. And on one of the islands is the Charles Darwin Center. We had studied a little bit of Spanish. It's funded by the UN, an American charity called the Charles Darwin Foundation, and the government of Ecuador. And it's an educational center, and it preserves, well, I learned the difference between turtles and tortoises. And there are qualified guides who are from the Galapagos Islands. I think the population of all 19 islands, well, some have no habitation, but is 35,000 people. That's all. And as I say, it's not like the Serengeti with lions and tigers and elephants, but it's this famous bird life of the Galapagos. And those are the famous blue-footed boobies. They really do have feet that shade. Okay. And the albatross, they have a courting ritual where they click beaks. I happen to see it. It's kind of noisy. Okay. And oh, this is so male, isn't it? This is just that's the frigate bird, the male, showing off in his courtship rituals. And the marine iguana, only its mother could love it, but it's typical of the Galapagos Islands. And the pelican. There are strict rules about staying on the path, landing on the islands in a dinghy. And I think I should warn you that you need to be quite able to, on a bouncing ship where you just had slept overnight, get your hips onto a dinghy and swing your legs in with lots of help. I mean, there's lots of help getting you into the dinghy to motor to the nearest island. Okay. And there's a tortoise. I said to Megan, is he moving? And she said, look closely, Grandma. The head moves a little. And the sea lions that take up benches, they're very cheeky. Next. Oh, Stingray Beach. We were told not to go into the ocean there, but that was stingray nesting grounds. Next. Oh, this is a good little story. In the 18th century, the islands played host, and I don't know if they played host. It was in that area that British whalers came on a whale hunt. And their letters home, they would deposit in this keg on an island and hopes that the next whaling ship would pick up their letters and take them back to England and deliver. So we put postcards in there in hopes that the next week somebody would come and take them back to North America. And I didn't promise to deliver them in person, but I would put a postage stamp. I took one for BC and one for Quebec, and that's what that is for. the post office. Oh, and these are volcanic islands. So they're made up of lava, hardened lava. And there are some walks to experience the hardness. Next, let's see the time. Oh yeah, the sea lion taking up my seat. Next. And for fun, of course, the equator runs through the whole country. So there's many spots where you can say, I'm on the equator between the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. And at this particular place, the thing to do was hold up the globe and pose. What a good tourist does. Oh, I was so impressed with this too. You declare in Spanish and English that you will obey your naturalist guides, that you won't pick up anything, that you won't encounter an animal. The fact that the animals are so natural is because they haven't had encounters with humans. Next. And there was a cable car. And so I declined to go that high, but Megan did, overlooking the city of Quito. And then as an Irish person, I love potatoes. And so I was in my glory. That's a variety of Ecuadorian potatoes. Now, the tour companies, and they're limited in number, there's an effort to protect the naturalness of the islands. And one of the rules is that visitors need to sleep on the sea like this. That would hold about 150. Okay. And then the adventure is twice a day to haul yourself into one of these dinghies and be taken maybe 200 or 300 yards to a wet landing with your boots or a dry landing with your bare feet, and go walking, hiking, listening to an interpreter. Okay. Oh, and these are the faces of the Quechua demonstrating against high costs. And receiving media. I think the unrest lasted about 2 weeks. Okay. Oh, and that's the last slide. People do this, in the Charles Darwin Center, and my friends tease me about emerging from my shell. All right. Thank you to, so that's the delight, that's one side of this ambition to see the world. And I think you're very aware of the dark sides. And just to start our discussion, one thing I decided to do was go on the carbon calculator, and it indicated that my flight to Quito and return would put this how many tons of carbon into the atmosphere. And it calculated that in Canadian dollars, how I could compensate. I know it's partial and problematic, but it suggested that I should pay $80 to some legitimate green cause. The airlines will do that for you, but I thought I think I'll choose And I chose the David Suzuki Foundation, which does in Canada education and tree planting, and has a big media presence too. David Suzuki, one of our best known environmentalists on CBC television. So that was, but that's just to get you thinking about whether to travel, how to stay home and look at videos, just about as good, and how to develop our solidarity with the earth. Now, my last point, seriously, I once taught my son in a class, and at the end of the class, I said to him, Jim, how did your friends enjoy my class? It was one semester. And he said, well, Mom, they found you interesting, but they never knew where you were going to land. And that's why I count on Mary and Diane and Patrice to give me the referee's signal. Oh, just the last point. In Montreal right now is the United Nations Conference on Biodiversity. There's 17,000 delegates from 190 countries trying to hammer out a new statement about, and this is the final hope, 30% of every country's water and land will be preserved in perpetuity. Ambitious, and there are 900 press in Montreal, and a little group from Peterborough, Ontario students, very highly informed, are there too. So I'll do a story on them. So now yeah, Mary.
Yeah, I'm going to thank you so kindly for this, because you've done in a rather remarkable way something that I didn't think one could do with this kind of approach, which is to make us want to be there, and yet make us really have to wrestle with whether we should.
Yeah.
And is this something that not just the Galapagos, but any of these wonderful places where, I mean, I've been to more than 25 countries. So I if I never went any place again, it would be churlish to complain.
Yeah.
At the same time, what you point out so well by showing us the indigenous people protesting and begin to talk about the ecology is that the good that comes from that is incalculable. There aren't carbon offsets enough to somehow put aside those things. So I'd like to invite us. We're not going to have as much time as I would have hoped. I'm going to invite us to take now, Patrice, if you will, about 12 minutes, just in groups of 4, and begin to tease out. You'll get nowhere, I'm sure, but it'll be fun at least to talk to somebody. Tease out this dilemma that we're talking about. The two goods, travel being that good that we've just seen. I mean, how extraordinary was that experience? And even to see global solidarity as part of it. And the other side, the resources that are used and those who can afford to go can go, and the problems for those who are visited. I mean, what happens to those people that we visit, that we talk about? So it's nothing new, but it's awfully important, and it's going to be with us the rest of our lives. So I think this is a great time to take just a few minutes to talk with each other. Patrice, would you do the groups, and then we'll come back and finish up in our plenary. But Rosemary, thank you.
Pleasure.
You've got me drooling, wanting to go to the Galapagos, and yet you've pricked my conscience that I probably should stay home. So anyway, it's that, and that's exactly the dilemma. So Patrice, please, and we'll be back. 12 minutes. You'll be back. Zoom. Thank you all. I think we're all back. Rosemary, again, thank you to you for kicking us off in such a wonderful way. And I just, so that we don't lose it, I want to just say what Virginia Day said, which is she didn't know what she was coming into today for a discussion, but what she goes away with is the notion of setting goals for herself in her stage of life. Where would I go, and with what purpose? And Mary Donnelly commented on how smart that is. Where would I go and with what purpose really helps to narrow the universe here. So just one segue into the floor is now open. Use your reaction button at the bottom to put your hand up and make your contribution. I'm aware of our time, so I don't want to do anything that would take from it. Go ahead. Floor is open with thanks to Rosemary Ganley. Who's going to be first? Mary Jelinek, go ahead, and then Honor will be second.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we had an interesting conversation. I think the consensus, the people in our group have traveled quite a bit, and some of their family members are members of other countries now. So it's a very rich, rich experience that they've had. And so they're very much in favor of traveling because they learn so much and they're able to compare their own experiences at home with those of the country they're visiting. This topic is fascinating, and Rosemary, thank you for opening up this concept. Everyone, I think, in our group agreed that it's important to offset the carbon. Now that we know that that's possible, that's something that really is an imperative, really. But I think we concluded that the benefits to travel outweigh the downsides, given that, especially for those of us living in the United States, we're very arrogant sometimes, and seeing what other countries are all about, and really seeing and listening and meeting people from other countries, not just staying at a fancy hotel, but really meeting people is important to our growth and to the transformational of our world.
Great, thank you. Honor, and then Christine will be next.
We were sort of had the same discussion. It matters who and why you're traveling, but we were saying that our favorite place to go is Maui, and when COVID closed down the islands, seems they didn't really miss the tourists. They might have missed a little bit of money, but they really didn't miss the tourists. And very, in fact, when tourists did start coming back, they wanted the restrictions to stay. They wanted that. They wanted the number to be controlled, and that's kind of what Hawaii is looking at now: is can we limit the number of tourists? Which is an interesting concept, which is what the Galapagos do. You know, like, is that the answer? Is limiting it, how to control it? Great topic, Rosemary.
Yeah,
I wish everybody could have heard Cheryl Lyon, who's very much well researched in this topic, and it was a denunciation of our privilege and of the costs we're imposing. Just one tiny response to that is that I was reading lately that a big improvement will be in aircraft fuel. We'll all feel better when aircraft fuel is carbon neutral.
Thank you. Christine, go ahead.
Yes, and I always get stuck with, but because that's what we talked about. It's a difference on what purpose I'm going somewhere that it can be. But on the other hand, I always get stuck with it that the laws on which nature works, they go on whether I have a good purpose or not. And when I read or see about what is just happening in the Arctic area and in the Antarctic area, where the climate is changing so fast, faster than they thought, who have knowledge about that. So the last report on Spitsbergen was just, I don't know the English name of these islands off the Norwegian coast, far in the north. They have weather conditions never thought about. These islands are breaking away literally because the temperature is going up too fast and other things. So they have storms in a way they didn't have before. And then the Antarctic is melting, and the huge ice masses are breaking and are rapid. The Gulf Stream. So these things go on, and I'm afraid that I will maybe still alive when we have this breaking point, this point of no return, where everything just goes, you can't stop it, can't do anything more. That's why I'm a supporter in a way by ideas of the last generation, because this generation now is the last one who can do something, at least, and there are some easy things to do, at least here in Germany. So I always get stuck, and I know, well, but then I think about this lesbian couple, friends of mine. Well, they are binational. The one nation is the US and the other nation is Norway. So they have to travel or to see each other, because, or to live together and meet family and friends again, or to take care for relatives somewhere. So I can only say I'm stuck with this question. I'm stuck.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and many people are stuck.
Yeah,
and I think-
yeah.
And yet for others, it seems quite obvious. And so there's much to learn across the board here. Anyone else?
I saw Cheryl Lyon have her hand up. Cheryl?
Thank you. Just to pick up, I forget who used the phrase to make us feel better. I don't think it's about making us feel better. I think it's about healing the earth. And we won't feel good when we do that, because we'll have to give up a lot of our ways of thinking and living. We're not going to feel better in that regard. We can't continue this middle class life. We can't. And we have to kind of think of what will make us feel better. Let's look at healing the earth. Let's look at protecting a species. Let's look at where we put our money. It might hurt to put more money into something like that. It might cost us to do this. It doesn't make us feel better in the material sense, but perhaps spiritually we will.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And you also put helpfully in the chat a link to the greenzineonline.com, which we'll put in the notes from this, Cheryl, so that other people will get it. That seems to be a good resource from your perspective, and we'll certainly share that. Anybody else? I would, yes, go ahead, Carrie Roach.
Thank you. Yes, I would just lift up the indigenous, the traditional ecological ways of knowing tech, that they know how to take care of the earth, and they know the ways of natural ways of healing earth, and maybe that's a way we can do the both ends. So thank you. And that's from my own personal experience. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll put something in the notes too about a global sustainability study that was done this year by, the corporations are all over this, and they seem to be saying that sustainability has to become the norm, not the differentiator. And 57% of their 11,000 respondents indicated that they would consider sustainability important or extremely important when making travel decisions, and nearly half of them would say that they would travel less to travel more sustainably. So the business people are looking at the trend, and I thought that was really very interesting. However, only a third of them were willing to pay more for an environmentally sustainable trip. So that's where the rubber hits the road. So that's the balance. So we have only begun to touch the surface of this topic. We are grateful to you, Rosemary Ganley, that we have had this presentation that so creatively put us together into this mood of thinking and this mode of thinking about what we do next. And we're going to continue the discussion for those who'd like to stay on, but I want to honor the time, as I always do, and simply mention that there will be a water liturgy on Tuesday, December the 20th at 7:30 with Diane New on bringing the light of wisdom on winter solstice. And that will be a wonderful experience, I'm sure. And then we here at Water take a break between Christmas and New Year's. And we begin again on the 9th of January 2023, and our own Virginia Day. We'll be offering in the meditation a blessing for the new year. So we're looking forward to that. And then there'll be a water talk, same time, same station, that is here except it'll be at 1 o'clock, not 2 o'clock on Wednesday, not Tuesday. So the book is, which I'm holding up right now, is a very interesting book called Sisters in Mourning, edited by Suyan Pak and Michael Springer. And it has a foreword by the Catholic writer Mary Gordon. And this is a book about daughters reflecting on care, loss, and meaning, daughters reflecting on the loss mostly of their mothers. And it is from an intercultural perspective, women from a variety of backgrounds. I think all 7 of the writers, or 9 of the writers, actually with the editors, will be with us that day. And we will invite Mary Gordon. I don't know that her schedule will permit, but for those of you who are, as I am, a hardcore Mary Gordon fan over the years, it would be great to have her. She's a great water supporter, by the way, has been a long time supporter of our work. So those are things upcoming later this month and in 23, and you are welcome to each and every one of them. As you know, we do not charge for water programs. We rely on the great generosity of donors, and so all programs are free and open to everyone. Those who can donate are welcome to, and it is needed, but those who can't are just as welcome to be here, and that's really an exciting thing for us. And we are delighted that you're here, and delighted that these kinds of topics are something that you're bringing your own feminist, spiritual, and other intellectual resources to, because they do make an enormous difference. I go away from this conversation with the hope that you have a blessed holiday and a healthy 23, but with no real answers about how we will have to deal with these questions as we move forward. I think the carbon offsets are one, but there must be other ways that we can chronicle and catalog together. So for those who have to leave, thank you. For those who can stay, let's keep chewing on this a little bit and see if we can get a little more deeply into it. But for all of us, a wonderful and thought-provoking experience, with deep thanks to Rosemary Ganley. Thank you and good afternoon. Let's keep the conversation going. Where to next, Rosemary? And that's really the, where are you going? Where are we going?
I've got no plans.
Yeah. And what if we didn't go? That's what someone said. Virginia today, Susan Roll was saying that, what if we have WATERtea, and what if we hadn't done all the traveling we've done in terms of building foundations and connections with people in other countries? And
Well, we wouldn't know Christine for one.
Yeah, we wouldn't have known Christine.
No, we wouldn't.
And we've been to Munich and had a good time. So
Exactly.
and we were able to orient her, Patrice, to the places in the Black Forest that we like. And so she went there several times, huh? You've been there several times, Christine, to the Black Forest area for the Kurort that it is, the place of cures.
My faith would be different if I hadn't seen as much of this blessed, benighted globe as I have.
Yeah, I agree with you.
My faith would be shallower because I've seen so much goodness. And that's that in my later years, that's what is keeps me, is my memories of human goodness and my eyesight for seeing it.
And it's variety, the variety of human goodness too.
Yes.
Mary, I was saying in our group that in the early days of water, we talked about mission, and the importance of mission is to be invited. We were talking specifically about our Women Crossing Worlds project in Latin America. And so we were invited in, and we made friends, became friends with one another, and invited people that we met to come here to know our space as we knew their space. And we grew old together, watched one another get grayer hair, watched the children grow up. I think there's something about that that's important as we go into, as we share one another's cultures, one another's homes, one another's countries, one another's spaces. That keeps, if we can do that, then we're not tourists. we become global citizens. It's a dilemma, it's a challenge, but
Mhm.
I think it's an important goal.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, but there are different kind of tourists. Where there are the ones who would just fly for a weekend somewhere to enjoy warm water, sun, or whatever. And then there are the tourists like Rosemary talked about going to Galapagos just to enjoy the wildlife there, to enjoy the scenery, and to get to know something in real, not just by the book. Which reminds me of the vacations I had with my former husband in the US. We were there 3 times. I think, yes, we were there 3 times and in the Southwest. And these were really good vacations because we had the privilege to travel around for 4 weeks. This was really a good time. Yeah, but nevertheless, it doesn't change the things. Well,
Mhm.
I'm really, I can follow that what you said, Diane. I would be a different person
Mhm.
for sure. But I think what to do now is, well, I'm stuck on that, and what I'm still stuck because I don't have a group to talk about these things is like, what will be the rules we have to obey to cope with the changes
Mhm.
which are implied by the climate change. Because, well, what I see here, that because, well, many of the African people I know, well, most of them had to flee because they are lesbians. But on the broader side, it is, well, they will come from East Africa, especially, or from the sub-Sahara areas, because climate change makes life impossible because they don't have water. And then I see what I mentioned shortly a couple of minutes ago is we have I think the 3rd or 4th winter, which will be too dry as it looks like that. We had 3 springs, 3 summers, and three falls, which on the average were too dry. The groundwater is going down and down, so that now even the trees don't have enough resources for that in several areas in Germany, not in all, but in several. And then what I think maybe what's the English? Ich wiederhole mich. I repeat it again. I lost the fun. Okay, I will talk. I will talk again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wandered with my thoughts, so that's not good when you are talking.
It's okay. Mary Jelinek, you were saying something, I think.
Yeah, I was going to tell just a quick. We're wandering with our listening too, so don't worry about it because we're following you, Gabrielle or
Yes.
Christine. We will
Christine.
come up with it. We will be with you. I think there's an imperative now to travel. I think it's important to travel. I just think of the group I met with last week. There was very interesting conversations that happened late at night, obviously, because we were in the same space, because we weren't staying in a hotel, we were all staying in the same place. And those are conversations that I could never have had on a Zoom call. There are insights that I got that I never would have realized had I not been there. There was people from South Sudan who talked about just the horrors. I knew them, but now I really feel them. There was someone, an Aymara, native woman from Peru who had never traveled outside of Puno. And she was there and her whole world was expanding and she was just so excited and she explained why she was feeling differently. And I would have never heard that. There was a man from Palestine. There was a woman from Lebanon. People were suffering enormously and there's no way of hearing that pain without being there and just having them speak. So I think there's an imperative now that if we travel, that we must bring it back.
Mhm.
We must speak of what we've heard and seen, because that's our obligation.
Yeah.
And then finally, there were so many people who, when I said, you know, how much I told them how much it meant to me to have met them, they said, "You must come. You must come. You must come."
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, so important, Mary. So important, and yet finding the balance that or acknowledging how those responsibilities weigh heavily on us to bring it back, to
Yeah.
take it deeper, to push it to the next level, and all those things that come with privilege, no matter what we do. So I mean, I'm with you. I've traveled a lot and hope to travel a lot more, and I think there's a purpose to it.
Yeah.
When Susan Rolls said that, Diane, I was touched, because she was saying, you know, essentially, what if we hadn't done that?
Yeah.
You know, what if we had, and we still do it, but you're right too, Diane, that we do reciprocate with people too. In fact, we had a fun Thanksgiving, Patrice, if I may say. We had Patrice and two of her German colleagues with us for the typical American Thanksgiving in a typical American family, a typical American home. We were the poster family for that's we're what they think Thanksgiving looks like in the US. You know, it's kind of funny. But there's something about that. And one of my great friends, the late great Marga Burig from Switzerland, used to talk about her America. And her America, she was one of the presidents of the World Council of Churches. And Christine, of course, you knew Marga and the
Yes.
her America was people like us, you know, or her Canada. I mean, you know, we would, and so that is another global thing too. She was my Switzerland,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
she was my Switzerland, who had taken their obligatory bomb shelter in the basement of the house with a huge, you know, after Chernobyl, and turned it into a wine cellar. That was their peace activity.
So I'm looking at this screen, and Rosemary, you're the only one on our screen right now that has not been at our home for dinner. We need to change that. How can we be friends if we haven't been in each other's space?
Even Mary
Yes.
yelled has been for dinner. Get a little snack that night.
As long as I have your permission to travel.
Yes, I know. I mean, this is what it
Imperative.
means.
No, Mary Ellen, an imperative, not permission.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, I just want to circle
She
back
learned
to
that word in the
Mary
Vatican.
Oliver.
They taught her that word, imperative.
An imperative.
Okay, it's a deal.
All right.
So
No,
Mary
really.
Oliver, pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. Speak about what we've seen and heard. My final thing is, I just want to be a turtle.
Why?
Not
Why?
much.
Yes.
But Rosemary, what shocked me about that picture of you, here you are being a turtle,
Yeah.
your nails done beautifully, your hair looking great, your outfit perfect. How does that happen? I would have looked like, you know, somebody had put me in a bag and shaken me up by the time I was that part of the trip.
I guess it's traveling with a granddaughter who cares
Oh.
about those things.
Really?
Ah,
Those
there you
ripped
go.
jeans? Did you have the ripped jeans?
That was so lovely seeing the two of you together, Rosemary.
Yeah, she's
I
beautiful.
looked at her
yeah.
smile and I thought, oh, you share that. Lovely. How
How's she
lovely.
doing?
She's back in Alberta, and they have in-person classes. And that's our most right-wing province, but there are progressive groups too. Yeah, and she's taken up horses. She got a lasso for her birthday.
Oh, glory be to God. Patrice, did you have any thoughts about this from your perspective as a German now spending your year in the US with a typical American social justice group with typical American
why not? But there's one real problem. I tire very easily. So I would at least need a companion who's traveling with me, so that when I land in Washington, that somebody can help me, because I would be so tired that I couldn't think straight. And this
Well,
is a real problem.
But didn't you stay
that's-
at Cheryl's one time when you were here? I
Yeah,
believe?
well, yes, I was there. That was really wonderful. It helped
Yeah.
a lot. I was in a very difficult situation then, and that I think it was in '96, I think. Yes, and that helped me a lot to go through my first cancer treatment, which was the
Wonderful.
year later. Then, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Well, you have
yeah,
support
yeah.
around the world, Christine, you know that.
Excuse me.
You have
Yeah,
support
I-
around the world. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the other good
But
thing.
so-
Patrice, what
so-
about
so
you?
the-
Yeah.
So the
Well,
thing is that I enjoyed it very much, that I at least could have a 2 hours or 1 hour shift at distributing flyers in a certain mall and the WCC, because I found out, well, I know it, but I found out again, I am not made for degrees around 30.
Oh, like the
centigrade.
heat, yeah.
It was, well, but it was, well, I can't do it and again because I was so used to it, but that's a real problem. The resources are not so high, but they organized it very, very nice. The Rainbow Pilgrims of Faith, that's a nice website too. And maybe you remember Gabriele Meyer, I don't know.
Of course.
And yeah,
Patrice, thoughts?
yes. And
Yes.
that, yeah.
Yeah, Patrice, go ahead.
Yeah.
Actually, there is a topic that came to my mind, especially at the end of the part. I don't know if you've heard of volunteerism before. That's like something that was on my mind because I'm doing a voluntary service here. And
Yeah.
of course, you have many options now there when you're young and you want to go abroad for a year. And there are different types of traveling, and
Yeah.
I'm very happy with the choice I made with
Yes.
going to the US. Serving at water was the best choice. But however, there are projects or organizations that offer young people to go to, I don't know, Asian countries, African countries, and working in an orphanage. As an 18-year-old person dropping right out of high school, no qualifications for that position, nothing, just the wish to help without being able to help, without actually knowing that they may do more damage than actually helping. And it's not even their fault, I think, because no one does that on purpose. I believe in a good that people have a good idea, but those companies, I think, who send them there just
Yes.
don't. I had a presentation on that topic in university, and there are actually companies building orphanages with orphans that actually have parents that are just too poor, so they provide the parents money when they send their children into the orphanage, so they get volunteers
Oh, boy.
from other countries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
like things going on in that company field, which I just tried to be very careful about, because
Yes.
I definitely want to do something like that.
Yeah.
And still, it has to do with traveling. It has to do with going into a culture. That's, I think, an important question we have to ask ourselves when we're traveling nowadays, rather volunteering or just discovering, is, do the people actually want me there, or am I a burden, or am I a help,
That's
or
great
am I
question.
welcome?
Yeah. And if
Yeah.
Pamela were on right now, she would probably also say something that I don't know if she said it to all of us or just to me, that we have to be very careful with the service projects and younger people with the abuse issues, and also with what's the topic that she's working on? The
Sex trafficking.
yeah, the sex trafficking,
Mhm.
because it's so much there and it's invisible until it becomes visible.
Yeah, she's a person who's with us from Wesley Seminary for a year doing her ministerial practicum here at Water. She's a native of Jamaica. a woman who's had a career in finance and is now training to become a minister, and she's focusing on this question of sex trafficking.
Who was it? Was the on here with one?
She wasn't here today. She'll be in
no.
tomorrow.
No, not
She's
today,
in on
but
Wednesday.
yeah.
She was on a couple times ago. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I didn't get the name. Who were you
Her
talking
name is
about?
Pamela Miller, and
Very
she's
well,
with
no,
us
I
for
don't
a
know.
year at Water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Well, we are coming to
Yeah.
yes. Anything, Rosemary? Any final?
No, I'm just grateful for this experience in December. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you so
me
much.
too.
Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Thank
And,
you so
and
much.
so good to see
This
each and every
is-
one of you.
Yeah.
And unfinished conversation, but important nonetheless. And
Yeah.
it will go with us. This will keep percolating among us. I
Yeah.
think so.
And
good.
love the poinsettia behind you, Rosemary. A
Oh.
nice touch.
Yeah, very nice
That's-
touch.
I
And
find
Mary
that
Helen, that you ordered that snow. I know it's a picture, but that you ordered that snow today in Woodstock. It's really.
Oh, it's beautiful. It looks like that right now. It does, yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
Well, we look forward
Oh, look
to
at another poinsettia in Munich. Here we are. Another. Great.
Oh, my gosh. Oh,
We'll walk on together. That's all.
That's
Yeah.
all.
let's
And-
go to
was-
Aldi's and get them.
But isn't it? But
that's-
isn't it a rich? Aren't we lucky to have this? I mean, to
Yes.
have
Each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I treasure
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.